Welcome back, friends. In the last lesson, we set up the OpenAI API environment. We made a first call to OpenAI API, and we also experimented with crafting prompts to generate content. We asked OpenAI to explain gravity from the perspective of a 5-year-old child. And now we will take a step further by building a quiz generation application, which will let us create multiple choice questions. This app will allow us to create multiple choice questions with options and correct answers, all based on the content from the document or a web page. And by the end of this lesson, you will definitely have this interactive quiz generator. But more importantly, we will understand the essential concepts and components that go into building such an application. We'll be reading content from the text file or web page, creating a system prompt and user prompt tailored to quiz generation. We'll write quiz generation function to send the prompt to OpenAI, and then we'll build a simple interactive interface using Gradio that allows user to input text or a URL and receive quiz questions in return. And our goal is to keep it simple and help understand how everything works step by step. So let's get started. As a first step, make sure that the physics_lecture.txt is in your local directory. It is available in the resources, GitHub resources. Otherwise, you can copy any text and make your own text file. I have just copied a text on friction in this text file. So what we will be doing, we will be creating the duplicate of this previous Jupyter notebook so that we do not have to create the client and load the API again in the code. So I'll just duplicate it. I'll rename it as quiz generator, and let's open this quiz generator app. I'll first change the title over here. You can do same. So we are creating automatic quiz generation from document web page. Further to that, we have already installed OpenAI library in our previous lesson, and we have already learned how we can upload OpenAI key through environment file. We also learned to create client and pass the model to it, where we are using GPT-4o mini. Now, instead of making first call, here we are creating a real world app, and let's name it quiz generation application. So let's continue with what we understood in our last lesson. We created this prompt, which was with the role user prompt, and we passed as a user this content. This was user prompt. Now in this lesson, we will add one more role to this messages list, which is the role of system prompt. So first let's do that. So what I'll do, I'll just copy this over here and I'll just comment it out. Let's just keep it as a reference. So let's first make our prompts. So here, instead of passing content over here, I'll create two separate strings. One is, let's create the string from user prompt. If we want to have any quiz generation, we need to give a message accordingly, right? And since it expands across multiple lines, we are using triple quotes. So we will come up with such a message which will be passed as a content of user prompt. So instead of this, we can simply pass this string over here. This is a user role, but we also want to assign the role to the model, which is of a teacher assistant. So we will define one more prompt over here. We will add one more dictionary in this messages list, and here we will pass something like system prompt, which we will create soon, and the role should be of system. Now again, we know that we want to tell this GPT model that you are a teacher assistant. So let's have a system prompt string accordingly. So I'll create one more string over here, system prompt. Perfect. So we are not passing any text over here for now. In our message to model, we need to pass one text as well. Let's say something from WikiEarth. So let's say I pick this couple of lines over here and I pass this as a text. So again, I'll keep triple quotes. All right, so let's run this. So definitely this is what we expect. Let me move these prompts in this section where I am supposed to define prompts. And also what I can do, I can simply pass a string over here instead of this complete message. I can pass it as a string text. Let's put it over here as a string text. All good, all same. We'll get the same output with this. So we'll get the same output. We have just adjusted it, our codes here and there. Now is the time to add some more things. Instead of creating our text, we can read data from text file here. That comes from pure Python programming. And if you are not a beginner, you must be aware how to read data from a text file. And if you are a beginner, here is your code. So instead of passing this text directly, we can read data from text file. So we have already got physics_lecture.txt. What we can do, we can read maximum number of lines. Let's say 100 we want to read, just for the interest of keeping our token limit. And with the help of with statement, open file in reading mode, and as we read the lines, we join the lines and create a string. And if we are also adding exception over here in case file is not found. And finally our content is read text from the file. So here our text gets updated to this, right, content. And if we print content, just to verify we are able to read the file. So yeah, we are able to read the file. And now instead of passing text string, we can pass a content string. So let's pass the content string over here, and it should behave in the same manner, but rather it should create questions on friction, right? So for now it is creating only one question. How about creating 5 questions out of this text, right? This is quite a huge text, so we should be able to create more questions out of it. So let's create few more questions. We can maybe make use of for loop in our function of creating questions. Since we have 5 quiz questions, we should be making use of list over here. So let's create a list of question quiz data list equal to some empty list. And here we can create a loop of if we want to create 5 questions for range 5. Let's tab this. So every time the loop is running, we can extract question and answer like this. Should tab this as well, and then we can create a variable question and answer, right? So we are not printing, we are extracting it in our variable. And finally we can add this generated question in our empty list with the help of append method. In case we want to define this as a function, right, instead of this we can define this as a function. So we need to write def. Let's name the function as generate underscore quiz underscore questions, to which we are passing some text, right? And let's tap this to make it inside the function. Now what this function is supposed to return is this quiz data list, which is updated with 5 questions. Finally we can see how we can call this. We can call this function with some quiz data equal to generate quiz questions, and where we are passing the content which we just read from the text file. And we can also have a look at first question with the help of, since it is a list, we can also limit the number of tokens with the help of argument called max tokens in this client chat method. So let's do that. Here we can pass one more parameter called max underscore tokens. Let's say we want to limit our response to 500. Okay, so this will just help us to curb our number of tokens we are receiving and hence the cost. And let's also have a look at another question which got generated. So we have 5 questions. Let's see the last question. So what you will find, effectively it is creating most of the time similar questions. Okay, and soon we will be looking at how we can make sure that different question is created for each 5 questions. But let's add one more way to read the content, and that is from the web page, right? Again, that is pure Python programming where we'll be using the request module. So read data instead of text page from web page. So for our Wikipedia page of Earth, we can directly read it over here. So I've just added code over here. Let's have a look at this. We are using two modules over here, request module and BeautifulSoup library. Request module is to send the get request to the given URL, and let's say we will be passing Wikipedia Earth URL over here in this function, and again response.raise status in case, let's say it's gives a status 500 or 402 in case the response is not received. And then we are using BeautifulSoup to fetch the response text by parsing the HTML content. Finally, we are also specifying the maximum number of paragraphs from the given page which we want to fetch. In the HTML content, it is finding the all the material which has p tag in it, and which specifies paragraph, right? And then it returns the clean text by joining all the p tag text. And in case we get any error, we have a exception over here. So let's see how it will work in case of Wikipedia. So definitely we are able to fetch the content, and it's quite huge, right? Now we have a new value of content over here, right? So let's run this. Now let's run this question, generate quiz questions again, and we should expect question on based on Earth, right? And that's what it gives, because our question has got updated from the web page. These are different in nature, but most of the time you will find in with this kind of generate quiz question where we are taking the whole content in one go and we are looping it 5 times, right? It is so inefficient code because we are passing the same number of content again and again. So the code might throw us the same question again and again. So every time if we are passing the content over here, maybe we can pass the different content, maybe we can divide this code, this text into chunks, and every time our loop runs we may pass a different chunk, and so that different question comes up with that chunk of data. Make sense? So instead of using this generate quiz question, what we will do, we will have two functions. We will split our text into, let's say, 5 chunks, for we are looking at 5 questions, and every time that in generate quiz question we can pass different chunk each time. So let's create 2 functions. So here is a function which splits the long text into smaller chunks, each containing maximum tokens. Let's say we are defining 300 tokens in each chunk. We are splitting the long text using full stop as a delimiter, and then to build the chunks we are adding sentences until the word count reaches maximum token threshold. Finally, here we are returning the top 5 chunks from this chunk list. So we have 5 chunks of different text which we can feed to our generate quiz questions. So let's modify this generate quiz questions again. So instead of running it in loop for 5 times, we can run it on the basis of chunk list. So instead of for I in range 5, we can say for chunk in chunks. And of course we have to first fetch out the chunks from the function split text by passing our content over here. So I hope this runs. So we have again we are fetching quiz data and should give some value of first question, which layer of Earth is responsible for generating its magnetosphere, and let's see some other question which is generated. Let's say 4th question, questions we can see are not similar, right? Why? Because we pass the different text to each loop, right? And that is how we make sure that the question is generated. And that was a very basic naive approach to split the chunks, and later on we will see the other advanced approaches, but let's keep it simple for now. So basically with this we are ready with the 5 question quiz generator, but still we are looking for interactivity with the user. And as we discussed in the beginning of lesson that we will be creating a very basic interactive app where we can either upload file, because we can read data from text file, or we can enter URL. As a end user, we can use this application with a UI, so that end user can enter file or URL on in this application and be able to generate the quiz, right? So how we can achieve that, right? We can achieve that with the help of package called Gradio. We can achieve that simple interactive UI with the help of a Python library called Gradio. It lets you quickly create a very user-friendly web interface for machine learning models and functions. And as we can see, it can be installed with pip, only requires adding a couple of lines, can be embedded in Python notebook or presented as a web page. So let's do that. I have already installed Gradio, but you can follow this instruction of pip install grid and you will be simply done with the installation of grid. That's simple, right? Before we create the main UI, let's see a simple example of Gradio usage. We need to import Gradio. We can create a layout manager with the help of Gradio blocks. Let's name it as demo. Let's create a couple of controls on this UI. So this blocks is a base for creating layout. Then we can create a markdown. So simply create a label. Further to that, we can create a couple of controls like text box using gr.textbox. Label is equal to. Further to that, let's create a button with the help of button class. Let's name it as greet. And then we have a text box to output. So here we have a field where we can enter our name. Then we have a function called button, then we have a function called greet, and then we have a output field. Again, we can create with the help of text box, and then we can launch this UI. Let's run this. As you can see, we have enter your name, where we can enter something. We have a greet button, and then there is a text output. So we can make it functional by calling a function when the button is pressed, right? So first we need to have a function. Let's say we have a function greet which takes name as an argument, and it returns a string hello name. And then finally we are telling when this greet underscore button is clicked, call this function greet and take the input as name, which we have given as the input field over here, and present the output in output field, right? So let's run this again. Inputs and outputs. So let's say I enter Anu over here, greet, it gives me hello Anu. So it's that simple, right? And now is the time to use this knowledge to create our final UI. Over here we have a markdown, then we have a radio button controls, we have a upload file functionality, then we have a text field, and then we have a button generate quiz, and then we have a area where this our output is presented. So let's create it quickly. Alright, so we are at the final stage of this application. Let's comment this out and let's create our own Gradio application to have an interactive quiz generator. We will start by importing Gradio as GR, and as we did earlier, we will create Gradio blocks, which is a layout manager, as demo. And first thing, as we can see over here, is formatted text output, which can be created with the help of markdown like we did earlier. So I'll just copy paste over here, just mark it over here like this. And further to that, we need a input method, right? Here, select input method, where I have a radio button control with two options, upload file or enter URL. So we have input underscore method equal to, here I can use the radio class, where I can pass the options, upload file or enter URL. So I need to pass these as list, and then here I can give the label of radio button, which is select input method. Next is giving file input, taking file input, and that can be done with the help of file class. So let's do that. File underscore input is equal to, again, file, and here I will provide label, upload file. Since we are only looking for text file, so I'm specifying that, upload a file, text file. Perfect. And then we have to take URL input, which is simply a text box, URL underscore input equal to gr dot text box, and then again I am giving the label over here, enter a web page URL, and then we have a submit button, created web button class, and the name label is generate quiz. And finally we have an output area, which we will again create with the help of markdown, which will present the given text in a formatted manner, whatever is passed to it. So just simply a markdown, and we will pass some text to it. All right, and then the time to launch, demo dot launch. I hope this works fine. Okay, so here we have to give capital B. Let's run this. So we have our UI ready, but it is yet not functional. And why? We still have to tell that when this submit button is clicked, we have to call some function. And let's name the function as process input. We cannot directly call generate quiz over here. First we have to take the inputs, and this process input function will take inputs and outputs, right? So inputs, what is the input which is going over here? First is radio button control, input underscore method. So first is we need to validate, yes, one of the radio button is controlled, and accordingly we will look for the input, whether it is URL which is needed or it needs file to be uploaded, right? So these are three inputs which are given to this process underscore input method. Further to that, finally this process should underscore input should output some output, right, which is whichever there is in the Gradio markdown. The final thing is that we need to create this function which will take this input and call in turn on the basis of input method generate quiz function, which will either give content from web page or text file depending on the control which is selected, and then finally it will call this function generate quiz question. So let's do that. So let's add a row over here where we are creating UI, and let's define the function which we have specified in function, which is process input. And now, as we know, this function will take three arguments. One, what is input method, what is file input, or URL input, right? So let's pass that. Let's call it as a source selection. What is the source of our content? Then file and URL. It can, so only one would be there, right? So on the basis of that, whatever is there, either file would be there or URL will be there. If file is present, text is equal to, we have a function which we already created, right? That was read text from file, and there you can pass file. If URL is there, then we will pass text is equal to, and we have a function for reading from web page which takes URL as the argument. So in that case, our text would be from the web page. Else, if both of them are not present, we will simply say return please upload a file or enter URL. And finally, we have to create a quiz data list on the basis of generate quiz questions. We have already created this function as well. Quiz underscore data underscore list equal to, and we already have this question, generate quiz questions, which is in turn calling this chunks data, which is dividing the content into chunks and getting the 5 top chunks out of that. So we have generate quiz question where we are passing the text based on the source selection. And then finally we need to output this as well in the markdown, right? So we have to convert first that into single string quiz underscore output. So there can be multiple ways depending on what is the control where we are outputting. We can control output it in text box as well, but markdown, since we have chosen markdown, it takes strings though, so we are joining quiz data list, and then we need to return quiz underscore output. All right, so let's run this, and we finally have UI, which is hopefully functional, and we can open it in separate tab as well, which opens on our local host. And let's upload a file over here. So we have a physics lecture.txt. We will upload it, and we will generate the quiz. So the questions are there. We enter URL. Let's generate quiz, and here we have the question based on Earth. So great job building your first OpenAI powered app. You have learned how to create dynamic prompts and work with user input. And now it's time to take things to the next level. In our next lesson, we will explore a powerful feature of the OpenAI API, function calling, and learn how to extract structured information from unstructured data. So get ready to level up. Meet me in the next lesson where we will be breaking down the concept with a real world example. So I'll see you there.